Hi, my name is Karen Holmes. I'm the founder and director of the World Peace Organization for the One World Government. Doesn't it feel that we are in a deja vu moment with the run-up towards the war between Putin and Zelensky and NATO, and it just feels like it's deja vu again. We're coming up to the next year in March is going to be a year from now is going to be the 20th anniversary of the preemptive strike on Iraq. And you could say that this is also a preemptive strike on Ukraine. Okay. So what lesson did the United States learn when it came about, when the Iraq War started? If this is deja vu, what did we do wrong? Okay, let's step back for just a minute and consider that the United States has made an awful lot of mistakes. In fact, our government proposals address 60 failed foreign policy decisions, and what seemed like was going to get us a power and prestige and strategic locations and control of natural resources and all that, just basically, we're going down again. We were the land of opportunity, and now we're just going down. So if our failed policies are failed, we have to learn the principles of what caused them so we don't make the same mistakes. You say never again, but how do you prevent something from happening again when you play the same games over and over again? So we have to understand what the games are, how they work, and why they don't work. With the Iraq War, the exit strategy for Iraq is our first proposal, and that addresses failed policy related to preemptive strikes. And that is kind of like, let's say that in the United States, the policy of preemption is like someone is the presumption of innocence idea. Okay, the presumption of innocence is that someone is presumed innocent until proven guilty. In the past, each of these ideas create chaos. Each of our failed policies have created chaos in the system. So the idea of presumption of innocence is that you can't defend yourself from prejudice and ulterior motives. A war comes about because somebody feels they're more important than you are. Okay? It's like one person is more important than the other, so it creates a sense of inequality. So the people who are dragged into a war lacks equality from this one. So Putin is sitting there going, I'm important, I'm important, I'm important, I'm important. I can do anything I want. I can put you down. Okay? Basically, you can't put anybody down because they're all equal. All the countries are sovereign. They're all equal. And basically, in God's eyes, we're all equal. It doesn't matter who we are. We're all equal in God's eyes. So universal law, you could say, God's perspective on this, treats everybody equally. And that's what we're looking for, is a way to go up for mankind to evolve instead of keep going down into the crisis all the time with chaos. Okay, so we are the preemptive strike backlashed on the United States. It seemed to work. We've been toppling regimes for a long time, other governments and world leaders, and for a long time to get control of natural resources and strategic locations, colonies, so to speak, people who are working with us or whatever, on whatever level. But it never worked. And the reason for it is because when you topple another government, you will be toppled under universal law. So to create a sense of equality allows everybody to function on a higher level. If you are going, I'm important, I'm important, I'm important, eventually you end up, that game leads to war eventually. And that's what my little oatmeal box demonstration is where power comes from. So we're learning where true power comes from. Does it come from, if if Donald Trump was the most powerful man on the planet, what happens if what he was doing wasn't legal, and he's facing the backlashes from all of his things that he did? What happens if basically true power doesn't come from having the biggest military? Because Russia now has 4 weapon systems, including the hypersonic missiles that we can't defend ourselves from. So now he's the most powerful man on the planet because he has a super weapon that nobody can defend themselves from. But did that work for the United States when George Bush was the most powerful man on the planet, and he had and Tony Blair, and they had the coalition of the willing countries, and all of a sudden they were going to not listen to that UN weapons inspector Hans Blix, and he was going to just go on and get revenge on Saddam Hussein, and it backlashed on him when there were no weapons of mass destruction. How about if you compare this to Rome? How about the Roman Empire expanding over? They had the Colosseum to train their people to become gladiators so that they appeared powerful. They had the swords. They had conquered lands they were on a roll, and they went all the way up to the northern part of England. They went on this roll, and they kept on going and going and going and going, and they left it, but by going after one person, and that was Jesus of Nazareth, they collapsed their power base because he was innocent. They had the Roman Empire, and they had all of this power, unstoppable tyrannical power. And it took one man to collapse it because he was innocent. Now, the reason I'm talking about this is one of the lessons that we're learning at Oxford and Stonehenge. The idea of how Stonehenge is formed, the sacrifice stone, demonstrates, and that's why the burials are there of wealthy people. There's a new exhibit out now at Stonehenge, the Stonehenge exhibit, that talks about the wealth. Who was this man? Okay, so what they did was they sacrificed an innocent person. You get these two strong kings or chieftains or whatever they were called. It doesn't matter because let's call them kings, just clump them all together. And they had their warriors, they had their army, they had everything. And they were going to butt heads with each other, they were going to fight. Okay, what happens if you decimate your troops and another guy comes in and takes over? Eventually it's like a fish tank. I don't know if you've ever had a fish tank, but as I was growing up, people would have an aquarium in their house, and you'd buy 5 or 6 fish or 10 fish or something, and by 6 months later, there's only one fish left because no matter how much food you put into it, they kind of ate each other. You had to keep paying attention to it. You couldn't train them not to eat each other. Okay, so they would die and they would eat each other. Okay, and basically there was one fish on the bottom that was eating up all the stuff, and then the fish on the top. And isn't that the way life is? It's like over the years. But what happens is when the games go on until you sacrifice an innocent person, and that's what that sacrifice stone at Stonehenge was all about. Is it ended the conflict because all of a sudden they're going, this innocent person collapsed our power base. He said, they would come and they'd be feasted like kings, and they would come together and they would show how much power they had, and then at the end they would demonstrate basically how much power they had, and then what happened is when the energy would become almost intolerable, that you couldn't hold them back anymore, and then they would. At that point in time, they would sacrifice the person, and then then they would turn around and look, and the person was always somebody who was basically somebody who was innocent. And that person's body is still there at Stonehenge, that person's body. So let's say who was the last person to be sacrificed there? Was that the person who was there because of the two kings came and a person was buried, an innocent person? How about if they disregarded that idea that the games continue on until an innocent person is sacrificed? It was an act of revenge between the two kings, and then they wouldn't give up. They didn't learn the lesson, and then a third king came in. And basically, let's say that Saddam Hussein was like a rooster in the hen house. He was tough. He was oppressive. He was not tyrannical, but he was oppressive to his people. But at the same time, they had a sense of prosperity. The women had freedom that they normally wouldn't have had in any of the other countries. It was more of a secular place rather than based on the monarchy. It was anybody could just work and go forward. Okay, but what happened is the last event there at Stonehenge had to do with this wealthy man, and he was sacrificed there and buried. What happens if he was the teacher? What happens if he was the one who was teaching the classes there and people didn't like it? The third king is the one who came in because he still had all his power, and the other king. So let's say we have Donald Trump and Joe Biden, and they're getting revenge on each other like this. And Donald Trump has asked for help from the Russians, okay? And then the Russians have Donald Trump and Joe Biden are fighting each other, but now the Russians are coming in and they have all the power. What happens is, who's going to get sacrificed? Is it me? Because am I the sacrifice? I'm the teacher that's supposed to teach people this? Well, maybe at Stonehenge, that man with the special, it was like he was buried with a gold plaque. It was shaped like a diamond, and it had a special 81-degree angle on it. The archaeologists, there's a program on it now, video on it, on the death of this one man. And so they've had all these other people who were sacrificed during the conflict resolution. But the last one came in and sacrificed. These two were getting revenge. One asked for help, and then it was like this wave coming in, and then that overpowered the other one. And then it set England up for a series of hostile takeovers. Okay, so now we have gone into a whole new idea here, and Stonehenge is taking its next step, and that is how to deal with this situation right now. Okay, that's why I'm talking about this now, is how to deal with it now. I've been teaching this idea. Okay, I'm not going to be at Stonehenge possibly if I am sacrificed by this conflict, just like the man with the gold plaque on his chest. I'm talking about this. What is going to be the lesson that people are learning? Okay, the games continue on until an innocent person is sacrificed. The Roman Empire had people that had Caligula, who's known for being very, very brutal. Julius Caesar, Augustus Caesar. They had all of these very, very powerful men who controlled Egypt, who controlled all these countries, that controlled everything. Controlled all the way up into England. Made a great deal of things, just like Vladimir Putin doing that. The United States has never addressed the idea that Saddam Hussein, there were no weapons of mass destruction. that Saddam Hussein was an innocent man. Okay, what makes somebody innocent? How about the idea of all those people who basically just have the right under God's law to create the life they want without interference? Okay, so now what is happening is Vladimir Putin, United States Trump is getting revenge. Okay, that's supposed to be where Trump is getting revenge, so he has more power. He's got the red and blue states, he can control the Constitution, he can do this, but he has to we are a nation of laws. So what we have now is Putin coming in on to help him, and playing the same game that we played as a country in Iraq. So he's challenging me, you could say, I'm a competition. I'm not going to call it a wizard's duel, which is something that people in my group have talked about, a wizard's duel. This is a challenge to him. But I am innocent, basically. I am teaching people about this. Okay, but what it is that I'm a prophet. And I speak for the spiritual hierarchy. The messages that I speak don't come from me, they come from God. And then I'm the captain of my own ship. So now what we have here is universal law that applies to every atom in the universe. Now, I'm going to tell you just one thing. One thing everybody wants is to be able to create the life they want without interference. That's an unalienable right that we have from our Creator because it's our purpose in life. Okay, when somebody tries to prevent another person from doing that, in the past it was kind of like a karma thing. It was karma, and it took a long time. People were squeezed to the point where they had to pay the price for it. It was a karmic debt. It was universal law that what you do to somebody else will be done to you. But nirvana, the idea, I'm bringing together all the religions, nirvana is stepping off the wheel of karma, you could say, and going into heaven on earth. We're creating heaven on earth. And that doesn't include wars. It doesn't include genocides. It doesn't include revenge. The reason why revenge is outside of God. Lady Gaia, God says, vengeance is mine, saith the Lord. That's in the Bible. Okay, vengeance is mine. In the Old Testament, it was an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. That Old Testament thinking. Okay, the New Testament was love thy neighbor as thyself. Do unto others as you would do unto yourself. If you want peace, you have to give peace. If you break universal law, if you break the law of cause and effect, you'll face the backlashes. So in other words, if you're trying to take control of natural resources, take control of strategic locations, take other people's resources, if your power games are oppressive to the people. So when you are oppressing someone with intolerance and you think you're more important than the other and you're waging war on somebody else, what happens is you're denying other people their unalienable rights to live their life without interference, to have a voice in their government and be treated fairly and equally. See, these unalienable rights are designed to enable us to create our life, to create heaven on earth. The earth is making its ascension. So when you are breaking universal law, when you refuse to stand on universal law, what you are doing is you are outside the universe. You are outside. You are in a place that Carlos Castaneda called the Nagual. Okay? And the Nagual, that was, let's say, Carlos Castaneda, it was a student who studied the witches, you could say the brujos in Mexico. And he learned how to go into the Nagual and to come out of it, because the brujos were the people who stood up and defended the Aztecs, the Yaqui Indians, you could say, and the Brujos were defending Mexico from the conquistadors. So what we have is, how do you defend yourself? If you go into the Nagual, how do you come out then and do it? You have to, only the way you can do it is by defending your country. You can say that if a soldier goes in to defend his country, stands on the oath that he will not go berserk and kill people, just, hey, I'm murdering people here. That if he's just going in to defend his country, then he has the right to defend his country. If he has the right to shoot people, it's because he has the sanctions. This is what Vladimir Putin is not paying any attention to, and the United States has to assume responsibility for what we did to Iraq. Because this was an illegal war. And now what's going to happen is we went along assuming that we could do something like regime change. That game went down when they attacked an innocent person. It went down into the games, into the abyss. We were backed into the corner. We couldn't stay and we couldn't go. And then there was that surge, and then basically then we started to climb the long dark tunnel, but we're not out of the long dark tunnel yet. If you are an alcoholic thinking you can drive better with a few drinks under your belt, at some point in time you kill an innocent person and then you end up in jail, in prison for doing that. And then you have to start, that destroys your life. That's the last thing when you target an innocent person, and then you have to start the long dark tunnel. You cannot stay here. You have to start working your way up. Now, one of my classes, the Getting Out of the Abyss classes, explained how to get out of the crisis right away. You don't have to go the long dark tunnel. But the government proposals, the third government proposal is about rebuilding Iraq and undoing the damage we've done. And I have also, I have to work with my family because my family is parallel to Iraq. Let's say Saddam Hussein has returned and is willing to help. In fact, one of my books, I channeled Saddam Hussein, and he's coming back to help rebuild Iraq for undoing the responsibility. All my guides are the past kings and queens and presidents that are coming back to undo the damage they have done. They did while they were in their lifetimes. So if you take Vladimir Putin and you take Xi Jinping, who have learned the lessons that our failed policies, our economy is not good. We outsourced and downsized our economy to China. Now we're facing an economic crisis because they can control the supply line, you could say. They could just shut us off and trade on the east side. Or to the west side of them in their Silk Road idea. They could just cut us off. And how are we going to rebuild our natural resources? That's one of the things that our organization is working on too, is how to create functioning on a higher level and not a lower level. We don't want to go down. We don't want to ignore the crisis. We want to create heaven on earth. And that has to be a global renaissance based on the true principles of where the economy is. Russia and China think that this is their century to shine. They're more important than everybody else. They've got weapon system, and they're making the same stupid mistakes that the United States made. They don't understand the principles of what makes it happen. So if we made a lot of mistakes, now it's time to go back in and stop making those mistakes, understand the principles of what happened, and then work to undo the damage we've done. My guides are willing to help us. In fact, they're willing to help us lots of ways because it allows them to undo the damage they've done. And one of the things is this: when we purify the legal system, we're going to have classes in 5 major law schools. And the students there are going to look at the laws that are causing chaos in our legal system. We're going to, I have to set up this new structure. I have the as my organization has the right to purify the legal system, and I started out with universal law, introducing that into the legal system. Now the next step is to work with the take my organization and solidify it into all this network idea of people working together. And then the next step is to bring in the judges, because they know the cases that are causing chaos, the ones where the letter of the law and the intent of the law are kind of confused. Okay, and then the next step will be to actually purify the legal system, looking at the individual laws. Donald Trump looked at NAFTA and said, no, this won't work. I was supposed to work on NAFTA too, so what would have been a better solution than the one they came up with? So we're going to look at NAFTA, and we're also going to look at Donald Trump's version of NAFTA and see if we can improve on Donald Trump's version of NAFTA. We're going to bring this together, and we're going to look at the trade agreements between this, because the trade agreements aren't going to be between the three countries, a NAFTA, the USA and Canada and Mexico. Basically, it's going to be the trade agreements all over the world based on the idea of the international government, where all of the trade agreements will go through the Commerce Department and the Natural Resources Departments, and there'll be subcommittees, and made up each of the departments, like the Commerce Department, will make trade agreements, but they'll be made up of people from all the different countries, the economists from all the different countries, and then they will work out trade agreements. It won't be one country going in and telling another what to do. It won't be the failed policy of diplomacy the way it is now, because it's failing too. All right, so we all want to function on a higher level. We all have our unalienable rights. And the thing is, don't make the same stupid mistakes that somebody else made. Don't use it as a turnaround game. Don't you feel that we're kind of like Putin is playing this game of, okay, you did this in Iraq, so we can do it now, and then we're going to erase this plan for the international government, and then we can just this is our century to shine. I have to erase this idea of trade agreements between the countries, all the countries made up of all the countries. So now my question to Vladimir Putin and Xi Jinping and Joe Biden, okay, if the 5 permanent members of the Security Council have the greatest power, and you get together with the G7 nations and things like that, and you come up with these things, what do you think those other countries are thinking? What do you think? Let's see, there's about 200 countries, and there's 5 countries. That leaves 195 countries who don't feel that they're being treated equally. Okay? So what happens if those other countries have all the natural resources? They're looking for coltan. If you have a cell phone, possibly, do you have a cell phone? The coltan can be coming from, they're always looking for natural resources. The coltan, the Democratic Republic of Congo, has coltan. So those people there, instead of their natural resources being benefiting them, they don't. Those people live in poverty. They live in poverty, and if they stand up and protest, they get Ebola. Okay? Those people are not being treated. I don't even have a cell phone. I was given a cell phone and I refuse to use it. Does anybody want a free 4G network cell phone? I don't want a cell phone for that reason, because I know that the natural resources are coming from countries that are oppressing the people. I also pay a lot for my landline all the time, so guess what? I'm going to have to figure out, when I travel, I'm going to have to figure out how to deal with a lot of things. Okay, so now, don't make the same mistakes that the United States made. If you're Russia, Putin, Xi Jinping, don't make the same mistakes that the United States made. Don't follow into that. If you're going to sacrifice me, hey, my next step is to do my books. Okay, so the first step was to work on my books. And I've gone around the planning process. Now it is to bring in the people, to bring in the international level. So they're being backed into the corner, making the same stupid mistakes the United States made. So the trick is to know, or the lesson, not the trick. The lesson is this. Where does true power come from? Does it come from being more important than the other? What happens if you're fighting the universe and you can't win? What happens if you're fighting universal law? And the United States has already demonstrated that when you target an innocent person, you collapse your power base. That's what gave Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin the opportunity to function on a higher level. And also one other world leader, and that's the person behind ISIS, because that person is also facing problems. That person is taking the games very seriously too. So right now what we have the games of war, massacre, and terrorism. The pendulum swung as far out as they could on them, and then they flip-flopped, and now they came back to the middle. We don't see a lot of terrorism. There's acts of it now that's coming up, and that's because of the revenge. There's also, but the two games based on weaving an illusion, the big lie, have gone out, and those are slavery and genocide. So the exit strategy for Iraq, the two things that are missing are freedom and liberty. We're looking at those two principles that end slavery and genocide. So more on that in other videos. We'll go into that in each of those government proposals. So I'm going to tell you that I have absolutely no power. The games go on until you play it in. Everybody plays the games. Xi Jinping, Vladimir Putin, Donald Trump. Everybody plays the games. We learn our games in our family situation, and then we go out into the world and try and figure out why people are not playing the same games we play. Why, it worked when I was growing up. I pushed people away. I owned people. I controlled people. I outsmarted my family. I cut school, or whatever. And then you go out and play them, you get married, and you can't figure out why your spouse doesn't understand that what he or she is supposed to do, because that person is playing a totally different set of rules. It's like people playing different rules. Okay, so if I'm innocent because I'm teaching people this, and I introduced a plan that benefits everyone, okay, the thing is this. Universal law exists. The games continue on when you crucify or sacrifice an innocent person. That's what the lesson was, the ultimate conclusion of the games that destroyed all the power games. The games don't work anymore. You cannot get your life. Third dimensional life is based on thinking you can get your life by playing the games. You can't. They never worked. You just twist and create chaos. Okay? People die when you play the games. They're called the 7 deadly sins. Okay, so you die. Jesus came to overcome death. Okay? He knew how to overcome death, how to create the life you want. People in the Bible lived to be up to 870 years old. How did they do that? Was it because they had more vitamins in their food or something like that? No, they knew how to create their life. They knew where true power came from. They were taught in mystery schools, you could say, how to do that. So now we're coming up with this idea. The cycle has come around again. And now it's that mystery schools are for everyone, not just the people who went to those schools. Okay, so I ask that you like, share, and subscribe, but most of all share. Because even if Vladimir Putin and Xi Jinping don't listen, the games that you're playing, that everybody plays, back them into the corner when they sacrifice an innocent person. Okay, then you have to start to figure out how to get out of the abyss, and that's where my classes come in. So that's where I'm going to focus now, on the classes. That's the next government proposal, the getting out of the abyss classes, and that's what I'm working on now. Okay, so like, share, and subscribe, but most of all, share. Because this actually applies to every person on the planet.